What if you had the power to travel through time? Would you change history, correct your biggest mistake, or discover what the future holds? For one brilliant scientist, that dream becomes an obsession after tragedy turns his perfect life upside down. The story begins in New York City in 1899, where the brilliant inventor Alexander Hart Deakin is deeply focused on solving a complex equation. His concentration is interrupted by his best friend, David Philby, who reminds him about his long-awaited proposal to Emma. Realizing he's running late, Alexander rushes home, where his loyal housekeeper, Mrs. Watchett, helps him get ready before he eagerly heads out to meet the love of his life. On a snowy evening, Alexander arrives at the park to meet Emma. Along the way, he stops to buy flowers for her, but an early automobile catches his attention. Fascinated by the remarkable machine, he completely forgets about the flowers. When Emma arrives a short time later, she playfully asks about the bouquet he promised her. Alexander apologizes and admits that he got distracted. He tries to propose right away, but the constant interruptions from people passing by ruin the moment. Instead, Emma suggests that they take a quiet walk through the park. As they enjoy the beautiful night together, Alexander finally gathers the courage to ask Emma to marry him. She happily accepts, and for a brief moment, everything feels perfect. Their happiness is shattered almost instantly when a desperate robber steps in front of them and demands Alexander's wallet. Alexander peacefully hands over his belongings, hoping to avoid any violence. The robber then notices Emma's engagement ring and demands that she surrenders it as well. Emma refuses and struggles to keep the ring, but the frightened robber panics and accidentally pulls the trigger. The gunshot strikes Emma, and she collapses into the floor. Alexander desperately shouts for help, but no one comes to their aid. Despite every effort, Emma dies in his arms. Over the next 4 years, Alexander is consumed by grief and unable to accept Emma's death. He blames himself for what happened and gradually isolates himself from almost everyone around him. Every waking hour is devoted to building an extraordinary machine, unlike anything the world has ever seen. By combining advanced mechanics, electricity, and theoretical physics, he creates a device capable of traveling through time itself. After countless experiments and years of relentless work, the machine is finally complete. Alexander climbs inside the strange metallic vehicle and activates its controls. He travels back in time, returning just minutes before his proposal. When Emma arrives, she's surprised to see him already waiting for her. Alexander, however, is completely overwhelmed. After 4 years of grief and longing, he can hardly believe Emma is standing right in front of him again. Without saying a word, he embraces her and kisses her, unable to hide how deeply he has missed her. Alexander wastes no time and quickly takes Emma away from the park. They ride through the city in a horse-drawn carriage before he safely drops her off near her house. Before leaving, he begs her to stay inside for the rest of the night and tells her how much he loves her. However, Emma reminds him about the flowers he promised to bring. As he is paying for the flower, a speeding horse-drawn carriage suddenly strikes Emma, killing her instantly. Alexander is devastated. He changed the events, but not the outcome. Emma still dies. He realizes that no matter what he changes, fate always finds another way to take her from him. Unable to understand why Emma's fate never changes, Alexander realizes the answers may not exist in his own time. If the present cannot explain it, perhaps the future can. Determined to find the truth, he climbs back into the time machine and travels decades into the future. As time rushes by, the world changes dramatically, while Alexander remains untouched inside the machine. Alexander finally arrives in the year 2030, where technology has advanced far beyond anything he imagined. Hoping to find answers, he visits a massive public library and meets an advanced holographic artificial intelligence. Alexander asks why he cannot change the past, but the machine simply replies that no one can travel back in time. He continues asking for an explanation, but none of the answers satisfy him. Unsatisfied with the answers he receives, Alexander decides to travel even farther into the future. He arrives in the year 2037, only to find the world in complete chaos. The streets are engulfed in flames, buildings lie in ruins, and soldiers quickly arrest him. As Alexander looks up, he sees massive pieces of the moon falling from the sky. Desperate for answers, he questions one of the soldiers, who explains that humanity's attempt to colonize the moon went horribly wrong. The project disrupted the moon's orbit, causing it to shatter and rain destruction across the Earth. Before they can leave, a powerful earthquake tears the ground apart. Alexander takes the opportunity to escape and rushes back to his time machine. He quickly enters the controls, but another violent tremor throws him off balance. His hand slips, and the machine accelerates to full speed. Knocked unconscious, the machine continues racing thousands of years into the future. Time passes unchecked as nature slowly reclaims the world. Unaware of the journey unfolding around him, he speeds toward a future that will challenge everything he believes about science, survival, and humanity itself. He finally regains consciousness and manages to stop the machine in the year 800-2701. As he steps outside after days of unconsciousness, he discovers a world unlike anything he has ever imagined. Small communities of humans now live simple lives in harmony with nature. Although they speak a different language, many still understand fragments of English. One of the villagers, a curious young woman named Mara, welcomes him and helps him recover from the ordeal. Mara is the only villager who can speak fluent English. Alexander immediately tells her that he has traveled from the distant past, but she refuses to believe him and even jokes about his story with the other villagers. Their conversation comes to an end as night begins to fall. The villagers quickly return to their homes, as if they are hiding from something. Later that night, Alexander meets Mara's younger brother, Kalen. The curious boy eagerly asks him countless questions and tells him about the Eloi, the peaceful community they belong to. Their conversation is cut short when it's time for Kalen to sleep. Mara then invites Alexander to continue talking in private. She admits that, despite her earlier reaction, she now believes he truly came from another time. They eventually settle in for the night, but Alexander is awakened by a disturbing nightmare. As he gets up, he sees Mara comforting Kalen, who has also been shaken by the same terrifying dream. Alexander tells Mara about his nightmare, but she explains that everyone in the village experiences it. Curious, he returns to bed and falls back asleep. The next day, Mara takes Alexander to the ruins of the old civilization, where the Eloi have preserved stone carvings to learn the ancient English language. They then travel by canoe to the Eloi Tower. During the journey, Alexander asks Mara why there are no elderly people among the Eloi, but she refuses to answer and quickly changes the subject. Mara then leads him to the place where his time machine landed. Relieved to find it still intact, Alexander becomes confident that he can return to his own time. While inspecting the machine, Mara unexpectedly begs him to take Kalen back with him. She refuses to explain why and only insists that Kalen must leave with him. Before Alexander can ask another question, a loud horn echoes in the distance. Mara immediately realizes something is wrong and rushes back to the village in search of Kalen. Alexander quickly follows Mara back to the village. By the time they arrive, the entire village is in chaos as the Eloi flee in panic. Confused by the sudden attack, Alexander stumbles to the ground when a terrifying creature suddenly appears right in front of him. He quickly gets back on his feet and runs alongside the fleeing villagers, still trying to understand what is happening. As he watches in shock, the creatures relentlessly hunt down the Eloi. The creatures, known as the Morlocks, fire darts from blowpipes at the fleeing villagers. Strangely, the darts don't seem to harm anyone. Moments later, another wave of Morlocks bursts out from beneath the ground and captures only those who were struck. It turns out the darts were never meant to injure their victims. Instead, they mark the Eloi with a powerful scent, allowing the Morlocks to identify and hunt down their chosen prey. Chaos erupts as the Morlocks continue capturing the Eloi, while Alexander desperately searches for Mara and Kalen. Moments later, he spots Kalen with a dart lodged in his leg, marking him as one of the Morlocks' targets. A creature is already closing in, but Alexander rushes in and rescues Kalen just in time. The beast immediately turns its attention to him, forcing Alexander to flee. He races toward one of the Eloi's towering wooden structures and climbs to the top. When the creature grabs him, Alexander manages to knock it off the tower. However, it quickly recovers, climbs back up, and resumes the pursuit. Eventually, the creature catches Alexander, and both of them crash to the ground. It overpowers him and begins choking him, but Kalen arrives just in time and strikes the beast, giving Alexander the chance to break free. With nowhere left to run, Alexander and Kalen find themselves cornered. Just as the creature prepares to attack, a loud horn echoes across the valley. The Morlock immediately retreats and disappears into a hole in the ground. Alexander and Kalen rush after it, but they are too late. They watch helplessly as Mara is dragged into the underground tunnels along with the other captured Eloi. Desperate for answers, Alexander questions the villagers, but no one is willing to speak about the creatures. The Eloi have lived in fear for generations, and believe that anyone who fights the Morlocks will only be captured first. Refusing to accept that fate, Alexander turns to Kalen for help. Although Kalen knows very little about the Morlocks, he suggests visiting a mysterious place the villagers call the Place of Ghosts. Kalen leads Alexander to the ancient underground ruins known as the Place of Ghosts, where they encounter Vox once again, the holographic library that has preserved humanity's knowledge for centuries. There, Alexander learns the shocking truth. Humanity has evolved into two separate races. The Eloi live peacefully on the surface, while the Morlocks dwell beneath the ground and prey upon them. Vox also recognizes Alexander from his visit centuries earlier, when he searched for answers about changing the past. Hoping to save Mara, Alexander asks how Vox knows so much about the world despite never leaving the ruins. Vox explains that an Eloi once befriended him and shared the history of their civilization over countless generations. Although Vox cannot tell Alexander the exact location of the Morlocks, he simply tells him to follow the breathing before it disappears. Alexander reaches the Morlocks' lair, the very place he saw in his nightmare. He decides to enter the tunnels alone and tells Kalen to return to the surface and light a fire to guide them back once they escape. As Alexander descends deeper underground, the darkness grows heavier and the tunnels become increasingly dangerous. Enormous caverns open beneath the earth, filled with massive machines that have somehow remained operational for centuries. Strange ventilation systems and ancient mechanical structures continue to function despite the unimaginable passage of time. As he ventures farther inside, he discovers a room filled with blood-stained tools, leaving him horrified by what he sees. While inspecting the room, he accidentally triggers a hidden mechanism, and the floor beneath him suddenly gives way. Alexander plunges into a pit filled with blood and human bones. He desperately swims to the surface only to be seized by a Morlock. Instead of imprisoning him, the creature escorts Alexander to the Morlock leader's chamber, where Mara is being held inside a small cage. Alexander stares at the Morlock leader in disbelief. Unlike the savage creatures that attacked him throughout the underground tunnels, this being is calm, highly intelligent, and eerily confident. Using his powerful telepathic abilities, the Morlock leader can see directly into Alexander's memories. He knows about Emma, the invention of the time machine, and the countless attempts to change the past. The Morlock leader controls Alexander's mind and let him seize an alternate reality where he and Emma have their own family. Then he explains to Alexander the answers to the question he has been seeking. The Morlock's leader explains that Alexander has spent his entire journey trying to change an event that can never be altered. Emma's death is the reason he invented the time machine. If she had survived, he would never have built it, and without the machine, he could never have gone back to save her. This is a time paradox, a loop where changing the past erases the very reason the journey happened. In other words, Emma's death is a fixed point in time. No matter how many times Alexander goes back, history will always find another way for the same outcome to happen. The Morlock leader brings Alexander's time machine and prepares to send him back to his own time. Shocked and speechless, Alexander walks toward the machine, but before leaving, he asks for his pocket watch. As soon as the leader hands it over, Alexander grabs him and pulls him inside the machine. As the time machine races through time, the two engage in a fierce fight. Although the Morlock leader easily overpowers Alexander, Alexander outsmarts him and throws him out of the machine. Hanging onto the outside, the leader desperately tries to climb back in, but Alexander accelerates the machine even further. Protected inside the time machine, Alexander remains unharmed, while the leader is exposed to the accelerated flow of time. In just a few seconds, thousands of years pass for him, causing his body to rapidly age until he finally crumbles into dust. Knowing there is only one way to end the Morlock's reign, Alexander sabotages the time machine by jamming his pocket watch into its gears before activating it. Realizing what he's about to do, he grabs Mara, and the two race through the collapsing tunnels toward the surface. Moments later, the damaged time machine overloads and explodes, releasing a massive wave of accelerated time throughout the underground city. Caught in the blast, the Morlocks rapidly age by thousands of years, causing their bodies to wither away and disintegrate into dust. Alexander and Mara barely make it out in time, escaping just before the wave reaches them as the entire Morlock civilization is wiped out for good. Although his greatest invention is gone, Alexander doesn't seem disappointed. For the first time since Emma's death, he finally understands that some losses can never be undone. Instead of spending his life chasing the impossible, he chooses to focus on creating a better future for the people who are still alive. The Eloys now live in peace. They are no longer willing to live in fear. Alexander encourages them to rebuild their society, seek knowledge, and shape their own future, instead of accepting the cycle that had controlled their lives for generations. Alexander visits the very place where his house once stood, quietly reminiscing about the life he left behind as he remembers every corner of the home. Back in 1903, the story comes full circle as Alexander's best friend, Philby, and his loyal caretaker, Mrs. Watchett, visit his abandoned house. Though they are concerned by his mysterious disappearance, Philby believes Alexander has finally found the peace he had been searching for all along.